Good afternoon, everybody. It is Wednesday, November 3rd, 2021 at 3 o'clock p.m., and that means it's time for Women in Business. We have literally the biggest show we've ever had today, the most guests. I'm very excited. And I don't want to waste a lot of time talking to you. I'm going to tell you who's going to be on the show. I'm going to bring them on, and we're just going to go. And I'm also going to give you a little kind of warning that there might be bonus time because, there's 4 of them and I think it's going to be an interesting discussion. But I'm not like prognosticating or anything. I'm just saying it's possible. But anyway, my guests today are Justin Armenta, who is an award-winning digitizer that has been working in the garment decorating industry for 27 years. He's a seasoned vet with experience in logo cartooning for the old tablet digitizing operating embroidery machines. He does logo design, vector art, screen print, and embroidery production management, and his forte, digitizing. He's the owner of JA Digitizing Studios and also the production manager of a multi-headed embroidery screen print company. He's an industry educator involved in teaching online webinars and weekly live videos with the Embroidery Nerd Group. Yay. And Erich Campbell is an award-winning machine embroidery digitizer and designer, though he frequently writes for magazines. And he frequently contributes articles and interviews to embroidery industry magazines, both in the US and the UK, as well as a host of blogs, social media groups, and other industry resources, including his weekly The Take Up live show. If you haven't seen The Take Up, you should go watch. Erich has done many jobs in the industry, from creating and managing e-commerce properties to social media and marketing, to establishing and managing relationships between vendors and industry businesses. Erich is an evangelist for the craft, a stitch-obsessed embroidery believer. He's obsessed and firmly holds to the constant lifelong learning and the free exchange of technique and experience through conversations with his fellow embroiderers. He's also the producer and a frequent contributor to the popular Two Regular Guys podcast, lending his unique embroidery experience to the mix. Matthew Enderle found his fascination with embroidery after being exposed to an embroidery shop while deployed in the Middle East in 2016. Ooh, there's a story. Upon his return, he searched for a local shop to have patches made. Dissatisfied with the quality from his local patch shops near his base, he purchased a Ricoma single head machine from Craigslist. His goal was to provide patches for his coworkers on his local base, and in under a year had to add another machine. 2 more years later and 3 more deployments, he was forced to purchase a 4-head machine to keep up, and now operates 7 heads and a Marrow machine to bring the entire patch production process in-house. Not only did he take on embroidery at the young age of 21 with the purchase of his first machine, he also focused his time on helping other people in the field learn how to grow their own trade. He co-founded the Embroidery Nerd, which has the mission of providing easily accessible training to anyone interested in embroidery. He also developed the free web application threadconverter.com to identify thread colors for customer-submitted artwork. Wow, that's a lot. And finally, Jeff Fuller started his venture into embroidery as a patch collector. His own curiosity led him into starting Fuller Embroidery Works with 1 single needle machine in his living room. His obsession with the art got him to purchase 2 more commercial machines and open his doors. In 2019, Jeff co-founded the Embroidery Nerd Group on Facebook with the aim to educate and share tips with both new and veteran embroiderers. The group has soared with over 3,500 members from 94 countries. And there you go. So these guys clearly know what they're talking about. And I'm going to pop them in here. There's Justin and Jeff and Matt and Erich. Hey, guys. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
We're excited.
I'm excited too. This is going to be very cool. The first thing I want to clear up, though, is something that we talked about before the show started. And that's when I set up the show, I used the term reverse sexism to describe what we were going to talk about. At that time, I knew a little bit about what that meant. I didn't really understand the full connotation of reverse sexism and what it means. That's not what we're talking about here. I would assume none of you guys are feeling oppressed by the fact that you're males in a female dominated industry. I hope not anyway.
Not in the slightest, no.
All right. So I just wanted to clear that up because I know that once I did some more reading about reverse sexism, I was a little bit like, oh dear, maybe I shouldn't have said that. So I wanted to make that really clear. And I want to say thank you to everybody that's here because we only have a limited amount of time we were joking about going 3 hours, but I don't think anybody really wants to do that. So thank you all for being here. I'm not going to do hellos today, but if you have other comments, please do share them. First thing I want to start off with, though, is something that was said at the end of the show last week that kind of made me wonder how men feel about this when they're described this way, which was I said, next week on the show, I'm having 4 men on the show. And the response was, of course, jokingly, oh no, men are going to be on the show. But then somebody said, oh, that's okay. Most of those guys are honorary women anyway. And I went, I don't know. If somebody said I was an honorary man, would I be like, okay, that's cool? Or so I don't know. Justin, you're sitting next to me. What do you think about that?
I mean, it doesn't bother me to be called honorary woman. If that's the way you see me, then yeah, I'm good with that. As far as, you know, being labeled a man in a woman-dominated industry, as long as I've worked in it, I've worked, I think, with the same amount of men as women. And the way I look at it is if you're good at what you do, it doesn't matter the sex of who's doing it. So
okay, that makes sense. I mean, I know, and maybe this is a better place to start. Have any of you guys, and I'll start with one of you because it's just too hard to say have any of you and then wait for one of you to decide to answer. But do you guys have stories about women reacting oddly to, like, if you go to buy thread or somebody calling to ask you a question? Jeff, let's start with you because I know last week you said the women in the quilt shops don't swoon when you walk in.
No, they actually. So I am the one guy that they remember the name because I'm the only guy that comes in there that's not being drugged by his wife. So it's kind of funny because I haven't been there. You know, I go long stints without going in there. And every time I do, they look at me and they go, oh, hi, Jeff. And I feel a little awkward because I don't know their names. But they remember me and they all know who I am. But it's mainly just because I'm the only one that comes in there and, like, I engage them in conversation about, you know, what kind of stabilizers you have. I ask them questions about your thread. Is this poly, rayon? They recently added a micro. It's a 100-weight thread, and so I went in there and asked them about that. And it's, of course, it's rayon. But you know, every time I go in there, I just feel a little out of place, and it's more so, I guess, just it's the way that they kind of treat me as I walk in. And I don't know if it's because they know my name and they're, you know, they kind of hover around me when I'm in there, or what it is, but they definitely don't swoon when I walk in. I kind of think I see eye rolls. But that's just, you know, it's part of it, I guess. You know, I don't think about it. I just kind of, you know, to me, it's just kind of funny when I walk in there and they treat me like that, but I don't, you know, when I need something, they're there.
Right.
And that's the important part. So that's how it is for me locally. I know sometimes when I get jobs, people, they say to me, oh, you know, when can your wife have it done? And it's like, well, she won't. It's not going to happen if I wait for her to do it. I'll take care of it. You know what? It's
right.
It depends on who I'm dealing with and how it goes. But for me, when I go into the quilt shop, I just kind of feel out of place. And even when they had like a live training event there, and I was the only guy. It was awkward. There was probably 50 people in there, and I was the only guy. But you know, it kind of comes with the territory. I think when when you go into something that's more female dominated, you know, you have to kind of expect that the people you're going to be spending more time with are going to be female.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, Matt, I got to ask you this question too, because you're Air Force, correct?
That's correct.
So, and you started your business actually doing patches for your people that are in the service with you. So, did you get any pushback on that, or were they just like, yay, patches?
I mean, yeah, everyone loves their patches. So,
Okay.
the people don't really care where they get them from as long as they look good. The issue that I found when I started is when I try to get contracts with squadrons. So I actually this is the first patch I ever got when I started training. And this is what I was looking to make. And I could beat the quality pretty quickly. But the hardest part was securing the actual contract on paper, because I'm not in that top tier of, there's an actual order for government. You have to have small businesses, then there's small women businesses, small black owned businesses, small veteran, and the person who is immediately off base, who's my number one competitor, is small minority owned woman veteran business. So in order for me to get that, I have to have like a 25% undercut in the price to even be able to compete. So that's what I had, and obviously I couldn't do that, but people still came to me as like individual, but the actual squadron officially legally couldn't. So that's where I had an issue, but I mean, people still came to me for quality. But
so that works.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and I guess, and maybe this is me being, you know, having seen Top Gun too many times, I'm like, oh, the Air Force guys are machos. They're gonna, which is my prejudice, and I freely admit that I assume that they would think it was weird instead of just going, yay, patches, we don't care. So, and Eric, I gotta ask you, because I know you have a story about somebody calling Black Duck back in the day. That I think
actually, it's pre Black Duck. Believe it or not,
was it pre Black Duck?
Yeah, pre Black Duck. Everybody thinks that was like the one and only shop because I was there for so long, and everybody thought I owned the shop as well. But that's just, you work really hard for a shop and do all of their work for them, and maybe sometimes they forget who owns what. Suffice it to say, pre Black Duck in my first shop, before the internet was what it is now. Before, when it was just email, that was all you were getting out of it, and people were still faxing. I mean, this is a ways back. This is early in my career. You really wouldn't see somebody when we were working with somebody remotely. We would still have systems in place. We would do email and quoting and what have you. And the thing is, if you guys are looking at me on screen now, you see my name has that H at the end of the Eric. Everyone to a person, if I had a buyer who was female on the other end, especially, they would correct it to Erica. So it was guys and girls both. So it was everybody around the spectrum. It happened, but frequently with women, they would assume that if I was operating in embroidery, dealing with embroidery, that I was Erica, obviously, and would just continually reply to me as Erica. And admittedly, I'm not going to say it was. I don't find it offensive at all. I really don't care. It was more funny though. They would call up and ask for Erica. And by the time I would get on the phone and sounding like I do, well, it was fairly obvious I probably wasn't the Erica they were expecting. And so quite frequently, it would just be like, oh, Erica, come to the phone, please. And everybody thought that was great fun. Like I said, I ultimately didn't care, but it was funny just to kind of go back and forth. And admittedly, the one thing that I did get out of that, which I don't find offensive, but was just kind of funny, is there was always a origin story someone would make up for me where a woman taught me how to do it. That's just invariably, if somebody said, oh, Eric, I'm so sorry. Your mom must have really did a great job teaching you embroidery. And though I'm going to say this, my mom did work as a seamstress. She didn't do machine embroidery ever until after I was fully a commercial digitizer. She was not an embroiderer. She didn't teach me how to do it. I taught her how to do it. I mean, there's no offense there because my mom is awesome. And I learned, I think I did have a sense of what materials and threads and fabrics were like because she worked as a seamstress before she worked as she does now. And by the way, seamstress, I know that's an archaic term. It's what she would use, not necessarily what's used now. But every time somebody says sewist or sewer, it sounds funny. And I never know how to deal with that. I'll admit that. Sewist is probably the best I've heard so far. But invariably, somebody just go, oh, your mom must be just a fantastic embroiderer since you're so good at it. I'm like, my mom can't digitize anything. Nothing wrong with that, but no, she didn't do my homework. I really did learn this all by myself. But what I do want to make sure and do is give credit that the first operator I worked under, Elena, female operator who taught me how to do the initial operation on the machine. So it's not like I absolutely believe that no women ever tried to keep me out of the business. It was more that there was a lot of assumptions made about like, oh, your wife must love you. My wife actually doesn't love decoration on clothing, which, by the way, hilarious, right? Is my wife does not ask me to decorate a bunch of clothing for her. Sometimes stuff for the house. Rarely, usually she thinks that I want to do too much. So it's like there's no aegis that comes from somebody else. My mom, my wife, my girlfriend, my grandma, nobody wanted me to do embroidery. That was just me. And so invariably that's the story that happens. If I've ever had a negative connotation on it, probably the most negative it's ever been is sometimes in more of the artistic community. I've had people say that needlework being a traditional female space, that I should be careful where I'm stepping into it. And I will admittedly say I don't go in and offer my opinion on women's needlework about women's stories. I don't do that. I don't, because that's not my place whatsoever, and I have no experience of that. Teaching someone how to digitize, I don't think factors into that. And I found, like I said, and it's very, very few experiences like that. Mostly it's almost like, funny enough, it's almost like the reverse is that it's positive assumptions about you that were based on your relationships with women. It's like, oh, well, you and your mom must be so close. Oh, you and your wife must go to the embroidery shop all day long. I'm like, she could not stand to go thread shopping with me. She would die. I will be in that thread aisle a lot longer than her. No, she's not interested whatsoever in learning about the latest threads that I want to use. So that's more of the thing. It's almost more of like, oh, it must be great to have you for a husband because you'll make curtains all day. And I'm like, I don't think that was ever a calculus for my wife, one way or another.
That's too funny. Well, I want to share a couple of comments real quick because Mike's being sarcastic in the comments here. So I want to share. He likes Justin's closet, apparently. But he also did say, in my experience, the industry has been great. Have noticed zero male-female discrepancy treatment towards myself. And Justin, I want to ask you the same question. Have you had any real negative experiences, or has everybody been welcoming? And
not at all. I'm kind of in Mike's boat. I've really never experienced anything like that. If anything, I would say when I got into the industry, I was straight out of high school, and I think my age was more the established customers coming into the business where I got my start. They didn't want to talk to me because they see this young guy, and it's just like, oh, let me talk to somebody that knows what they're doing type thing. But I started at a female-owned business, and she taught me everything. And knowledge is knowledge. That's all it is to it. But no, as far as any discrepancies in what sex I am, no, I've never experienced that.
Cool. And Matt, were you agreeing with the age thing? Was that what you were kind of giggling there? Or
yeah, I was just making a joke.
Okay.
Trying to be funny.
Trying to be funny.
I made Jeff laugh, so that's all that mattered. One person laughed.
Well, hey, you can make Jeff laugh all you want. I'm fine with that. And oh boy, we have a big comment from Mike here I want to share. What I have noticed is that 90% of the embroidery-related content online is geared toward the craft, art, homemaker, crap for my kids arena. I operate in the commercial mass production world, and that 10% of content is pretty much the nerd group. I don't think it's a male-female thing exactly, but I think it might be a loosely related component. And that kind of leads me to my next question. And I understand that you all are not like social scientists or anthropologists or anything like that. So I get that this is maybe a question that's a little out there, but I want to talk about it because I think it's interesting. And the question is, why do we do this? Why do we think embroiderers should be female and nurses should be female and firefighters should be men? Or, whatever it is that are traditional? Is it cultural? Is it some weird thing in our brain? Is it what we're taught in school? Is it what we're told by our parents? I don't know. Matt, I'm starting with you because you were making jokes last time.
Oh no, I'll just be quiet from now on.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I guess if I had to answer that question, I'd probably start with like nursing. Like when you think of women, you're more like caring and nursing and whatever, which is why we normally think of women in nursing more than men. And like going all the way back to caveman days, Ooga Ooga, you know, the men were the ones that were supposed to go and hunt, and we were supposed to provide for that way. And then I'm very quickly losing my train of thought here. But
I think Ooga Ooga threw you off.
Possibly.
Yeah, and that okay. So let me think. Yeah, so women were more of the caring field, and then they would also do like all the uniforms for like World War I and II and whatever. They would run the factories while the men were gone. So at least that's kind of where I would see it. So then, like, I don't know.
Yeah, it makes sense.
I'm losing my train of thought pretty quick.
Jerry Lee's going to sweep in and save you here a little bit. Jerry Lee says females used to be reared to be the caregivers and the males were reared to be the head of the household.
That's exactly what I was trying to say.
That's exactly what you wanted to say, wasn't it? And I think that's a really good point. But okay, let's put this on its head a little bit though. How do we change that perception? Is it in how we talk about what we do? Is it having discussions like this where there's 4 men here who are embroiderers so we can say, look, there's guys that do this? Is it, you know, having groups like your embroidery nerd group where everybody is a part of it? I don't know. What do you think? And I'm just going to, Justin just looks like he's going, don't call on me. So what do you think, Justin?
I think it's back to, like I said earlier, it doesn't matter what job it is. If you're good at what you do, then it doesn't matter race, gender, or anything else. As far as I'm concerned. The exposure of like you said, something like a group where it has a lot of people, you know, if there is that group of person that's supposedly not supposed to do it or something like that, just showing that they are talented enough to be in the industry and do what they do. Yeah, I think that's the way of doing it. I think the other frame of mind is it's an antiquated way of looking at it, and Jerry Lee said it perfectly. I think the more and more time goes on, I think it is starting to get better as far as evening out. I wouldn't say it's exactly, you know, even when it comes to gender. But yeah, like I said, as long as anything that I go to purchase or a service I seek, I don't care who it is, as long as they can do their job. As long as they can do it well, they can perform the service or they can perform the product or get the product that's quality. I don't care who it's coming from, as far as I'm concerned.
I like that. Okay, I'm going to go around the circle the other way this time. Eric, what do you think?
Well, you know, I think that there's certainly something to be said for cultural ramifications of needlework as a female art. I think that's fair. Not only is it fair, it's fact. There's really no way to get around the concept of women sewing samplers and communicating through that medium. That is part of what's really out there. So it's there's no debating on that. I think the debate for us on how we kind of change things is to say it's okay for everybody to have their place in their spaces. And for us to just say, like me, I go into a store and I'm looking at clothing and I say, this is what I'm interested in. And I don't back down if I want to talk about it. Also, there is a little bit of a bias still now. I think when I got in, and we still have this now, the concept between crafters and commercial. I mean, It might be a joke. I mean, we were joking around saying crap for your kids, but stuff for your kids is still embroidery. It still takes the same techniques that we use. It still takes the same amount of skill. And honestly, a lot of crafters are using materials in interesting ways and doing things that we should learn from. We might style that as commercial versus craft, but sometimes it ends up being what is a male space, what's a female space. And if that happens, we should break that down a little bit and just say, hey, women are in commercial embroidery all the time. I know tons of business owners who are women. I also know tons of guys who are doing craft level work or doing work that is in the stock designs that becomes crap for kids. I mean, stuff for kids is fine. If I want to make a teddy bear, it shouldn't be weird. And if somebody else, and if a female-owned business is making militaria, that shouldn't be weird either. It should just be what we want to make, and that should be fine. But I think part of that is by just doing it. I know certainly, I remember distinctly having guys at my shop make fun of me when I was working on projects that they thought the art was feminine. So I'm working on a floral piece. I remember very distinctly, I had a piece that I was working on for a church where they called it which by the way, weirdest kind of sermon title ever. They called it Shoot Love, and it was a gun firing out roses and flowers. Don't ask me why. You get paid to stitch what you stitch. So I was like, all right.
Okay, that's an interesting,
super weird image. They wanted a big jacket back of it. Suffice to say, I was working on florals for about 6 hours out of the project and then working on a detailed Western pistol for the rest of it. And it was literally like, depending on which side I was working on was how much heat I was getting from the guys in the back while we were walking past my office. And I was like, guys, I'm doing the exact same thing over and over. And plus I was like, and that is a beautiful hydrangea, and I don't care what you say about it. I did a good job on that flower and I want to hear about it. I was like, can you do it? Shut up. Like that's how it is.
Funny.
But the thing is, I very rarely is it, I think, problematic so much as I think all of us have to not worry in ourselves, or at least we have to not trash each other. If Jeff makes a fuzzy duckling tomorrow, I shouldn't be like, Jeff's working on a duckling and make fun of him. I should be like, oh man, how'd you do that fringe? That's cool. Like that should be fine. Now, are we going to make fun of the fuzzy duckling? Probably, but not because it's like we're maligning his gender. I mean, it's kind of like what you said earlier. Somebody called me an honorary woman. It's only negative if I think women have some connotation that are negative. If you're taking it as a negative, you should stop and go, what about women is negative that bothers you? And if it's not, then it shouldn't bother you. I'm like, being welcomed into a space honorarily like that should be nice. There shouldn't be a problem, at least for me.
All right. You just said about 14 things that made me think of about 14 different questions. But first, I want to do some comments, and then I have a question that I want to ask, and I want to start with Jeff when I ask this one. But I'm going to start with the comments first. So be prepared, Jeff. It's coming. Okay, so Mike says, if I'm in a burning building, I don't care who comes to get me, but I'm 260 pounds, so they better be able to pick me up. And Cheryl said, my first teacher for digitizing was a man. It's more of an art form than a male-female thing, which I think is true. And then Mike chimes in again with, on the other hand, my dragging knuckles help keep thread trimmings off the floor. I'll see myself out. I kind of think maybe, yeah.
I think that's a caveman joke.
Yeah, that is a caveman. That's an ooga ooga joke, but it made me laugh. And then Jerry Lee says, we are changing it in a big way. Women and men are doing very different jobs now. I manufacture the tools and I work with 3 male digitizers. Men in the tool shops never expect a woman to show up. They are always surprised that my team has male designers. And I remember when Jerry Lee was on the show, she said she had gotten pushback from some people in the tool shops, but that's sad. And we got more here. Woo. And Cindy says it is the opposite in the screen printing world, which is something I want to talk about too. It was rare to see a woman screen printer. Things have changed in the last 30 years. And this is a good point. Sheila says, what about men as tailors and heads of fashion houses historically? All the guys back in the 1800s that were like the couture dressmaker, Worth, and all those guys in France were men. You didn't have women were rare. So as someone who started as a seamstress, I started learning professional techniques from tailors. And then Mike is reversing on his craft thing. I have nothing against Mike. Crafts. Yes, all those techniques are applicable to my commercial work, but there is little or no online guidance on how to make 10,000 of them. And for example, patches efficiently. Those industry secrets seem to be guarded, but crusty old dudes, I'm assuming, who don't want to let people know how it's done. So, and then one last comment, and we'll go to the question I have for Jeff. I'm going to start with Jeff. In the 80s, I worked on the floor in print shops. Things are very different now, and it's awesome. I do think things are different now, but I want to ask this question because Jeff has an amazing son named Adam, who has his own company, who is also working in this space. And so the question that I want to ask is, do you think that part of the way that we change these attitudes and get rid of the idea that men aren't embroiderers or men aren't nurses or whatever it is to expose kids to this? And since you're doing it, Jeff, I'm starting with you.
Now I'm in trouble. We're starting with
now
me.
You're in trouble.
So, I think that's part of it. I think it's just something that's come socially over time too. In our household, I'm the stay-at-home dad. My wife is the primary bread earner, which is kind of opposite of what traditionally it is. And when I was young, I was exposed to sewing and quilting. And that's kind of why I felt comfortable taking this task on. Had I not been exposed to that younger, I may not have went this avenue. So I think it's just, exposing the children to a different point of view is what's going to make them be more accepting of it in the future. So that's kind of like, I like to do this with Adam. It's great that he's taken an interest in what I do. But I really like that he not only gets exposed to that, he also gets exposed to his mom is the primary breadwinner. His dad's the one that picks him up from school. His dad's the one that takes him to all his activities. And his dad does the crafting, I guess, side of the business. So to me, it's just having that different exposure for kids will get them to, they'll see it as normal. And that's ultimately what's going to change is when the upcoming generation sees it as normal or people start seeing it as normal. That's when that paradigm shift is going to happen. And it's happened a little bit over time. It's just, there's still, people ask me to describe what I do. And sometimes I just cut straight to the chase and I say, I'm a seamstress, because they'll be able to identify with what I do based off of that description. If I try to explain what I do, it's going to be a lot longer conversation than if I just say I'm a seamstress. So I think it's all about exposing children to this different point of view, that it's not always dad's its primary breadwinner. Your dad does homey type stuff too. And like when he grows up, he's going to see that as normal, and he's going to see that his role can be what my role is today, and it's okay and it's normal.
Well, I don't know if the rest of you guys have kids. I know Adam because he wants to be on the show. So, what do the rest of you think? Any of you have any thoughts on this one? You're all looking at me like.
I have two girls, and they really never showed interest in doing this. The youngest one has come in just for helping out, and if we have a big job and she trims backing and trims embroidery and folds and whatnot. I think that's just mainly just to make some money. But as far as interest in doing it, they're excited and proud of what I do. As far as my oldest was in a sorority in the local college, and she was the first to raise her hand if they needed a project done with t-shirts or whatnot. Oh, my dad can do that. But like I said, I think it's the individual. It's not necessarily, oh, you have daughters, therefore they're probably going to be doing what you do. But yeah, I would, just like anything else in their life, my youngest played sports when she was young. That's normally typically the boy thing to do. But she played sports, and when she grew out of it and lost interest, I didn't pressure her to do any one particular thing. Just kind of let them do what they want and support them in every way.
I love it. Well, and I think that's a question too, and maybe I'm going to bend this question a little bit now, which is, do we also need to be aware as not just parents, but as adults that are interacting with children in any way to not put, because like Justin just said, girls you would expect would want to do embroidery and not boys. Well, why? What if we're saying that it has no gender? Why would you not expose your boys to embroidery, not anything else, just like you would your girls. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah. I mean,
Erich, you're nodding at me. What do you think?
I'm nodding because I agree. I think honestly, the marketing is what it is out in the space, and that's a commercial thing that's best asked of Hasbro and whoever else is on the toy aisle shelf, because they're still.
We need the Fisher Price embroidery machine.
All of us would probably have that in our shop on a shelf like in 5 minutes. I mean, that would just be an adult collector problem real quick. But yeah, no, I think that's the thing. It comes down to how we decide to treat things. I think honestly, Justin's got it no matter what we're talking about. And I think that also goes to those of us who educate. When we educate, we should just uplift people who are interested. If you come to a class of mine and you're interested, I could care less about any part of your background other than if you want to discuss how that affects your outlook and what have you, then I, of course, absolutely want to know about it, because I just want to know how you got where you are and where you want to go from here. I want to know about your purpose. But does it have anything to do with how I see you as a student? Absolutely not. How I see you as a student is your engagement, your desire to learn, your desire to perfect your craft. That should be all that matters. And I think as long as we treat it that way, and also admittedly, when we have a space where people aren't getting access to, if we have a chance to give them access to the space, then that's great. We should do that. I think that's absolutely fair. For if you are in a place where you've got a voice, use your voice to make sure everybody gets a chance. But certainly there is a point to saying, there is merit involved too. You got to jump in and try. If you jump in and try, I will help anybody. I will give anybody a boost who wants to try.
And Justin, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. You look like you were going to say something.
Oh, no, that's fine.
You're all right? Okay, good. All right, Matt, you have anything you want to add to this one, or?
I'm not going to lie. I forgot the question.
You forgot the question.
So probably not.
Probably not. Okay, well, then I'll go on to some comments here, because this is making me laugh. So Sheila says, LOL, we can all try we can all try better to not be crusty. New motto for all embroidery digitizers. So now I think there needs to be a hashtag, don't be crusty.
There you go.
Absolutely.
Or any sample that you like, you can hashtag not crusty.
There you go. And Carolyn says, we have 3 granddaughters. Not one of them has ever been taught girls or boys. So I like that. And then Crystal says, I agree about screen printing. When I first started, I was a stacker at the end of a dryer. That company refused to train females to do printing. And Erich, you pronounce this.
Yosta.
Thank you.
Everybody makes me do
the
it.
Art, and the art has no gender. And then there's the creation part, no gender there either. So I think he's right. But I have to say, now that we've been talking about this, I really want to see like an embroidery nerd kids camp where you have all the little boys and girls come and learn embroidery. I think
works.
That would be totally cool.
Coming soon to not my house.
To not your house.
I hear Jerry Lee has a shop coming up.
Yeah,
there we go.
Upcoming, you could do it there.
She can't deny it. She's not here.
Camp for kids. I love it.
I'm all about it. Just, not my basement, because that's not where parents want to drop their kids off.
Your basement. Well, I wasn't really suggesting your basement. And apparently, Carolyn wants to come to camp. So.
Yeah, we've had this discussion many a time. Is should we do a co-located off-site training somewhere? And that thought has come up many a time, folks. That's
just hijack Dax.
Hijack Dax.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, that's actually on my list of things to do next year. I want to hijack Dax and talk about some women's issues and maybe have some discussions like this, because I think it's interesting. Apparently, Jerry Lee is in because she says bring them on.
Jerry's always in.
I said it here first. Embroidery nerd camp for kids. Did I just get you into something? Oops. I didn't mean to. But I want to talk about the power of social media for a minute, because I think one of the things that I really want to talk with you guys while I have you here is how do we change these attitudes, and how do we... Okay, let me back up a step, because I guess the first question maybe needs to be, so you've told me stories about various things that have happened to you, but do you really, do you feel that there's a really pervasive kind of negative attitude toward guys in the industry that needs to be changed? I don't know. You're all kind of going, no.
Nothing
Matt,
I've
I'm picking
experienced.
on you again. What do you think?
Do I think anything needs to be changed?
Yeah. Do you think
Not really.
that it's
I mean,
More government
think-
grants.
more government grants? That'd be good.
I mean, I like money, but no, I mean, like I said before, with the whole the order of contract awarding,
right.
like most of the people, like obviously I'm in a very niche market, so the big patch shops, they all have women at the front counter that take your orders and everything. So when people hear that I'm the patch guy, that's how I'm usually introduced on base. I don't know, it just doesn't seem like it has as much weight as like the other shops where you have a lot more women presence, which is why in my social media I try to say I'm a male, but it doesn't really mean anything in the long run. But
Well, okay. So let me go back to my first question then, because it feels like you guys are all like, this stuff has happened to me, but it's not like oppressing my life to the point where
No, not
I
at all.
can't do what I want to do.
No.
So, but I still think it's an attitude that needs to change, because we have people coming up that maybe are still perceiving some of this as embroidery is a female thing and guys don't get involved in it as much or whatever it is. So how do we change that perception? We do things like this, obviously, but do we use social media? Do we have camp for kids? Do we have camp for grownups? Do we have, I mean, I know I'm throwing out a lot of different options here. Apparently, I really want camp for kids, which I have no idea why I want that, but I do.
I'll jump in and say this. I think the hard part is when we talk about it within the industry, I think within the industry, there's very little issue whatsoever. And if anything, it's maybe outside of the industry. Sometimes if I talk to a random dude, sometimes random dude will be like, you do what? But then if I go, oh yeah, you know that the hat you're wearing, and it's usually whatever sports or what have you hat, and I'll admit I'm not a sports guy, so I'm like, a sports ball team, whatever the thing that guy has, they run the ball into the end of the whatever. I'll look at that and go, oh yeah, I make those. And they're like, oh, that's cool. Usually that's as far as
team.
I'm just like, whatever thing that you're into, or somebody will be into something else. Honestly, I talk to a lot of nerds and stuff, and so they'll be like, here's this cool patch for this, and they're like, awesome, cool. The thing that's on your dice bag for D&D, that dragon, I make those. That's what I do. I make the designs that make that happen. Or I just phrase it in a way where I'm like, I make the programs that control your friendly embroidery robots. And then suddenly everybody's cool again, because it's just like they just don't get what it is at all. I think if there's anything to be done, if there really was a thing to be done, it's just kind of being outright saying, this is something I do and this is what it is and it's cool. But I think with maker spaces and people doing 3D printing and people doing other kinds of manufacture, we kind of slid in the back doors like, oh yeah, we also have an XY axis that we're controlling through a program. And it's like, as that stuff became cool for everybody anyway, we're just like another manufacturing process that lo and behold has been around for a couple hundred years. But we kind of slide in the door there as like, oh, it's kind of techie and creative and interesting. And especially with the younger people they're into merch, they're into streetwear, they're into patch collecting, they're into pins, they're into something where they're like, oh, I get it. I get merch, I get hats, I get patches. And they don't ask these questions. It's old dudes. That's the only time where I get like old dudes who are like, oh, your wife makes you come over to this thing. Yeah, I'm out here sitting waiting to get out of the quilt shop. And you're like, nah, I gotta pick up some 60 weight thread. I need bobbins. All right. No, yeah, dudes, sure. That's more of the thing. And even then it's usually fairly harmless. Or like I said, you get the positive side of it. When I was teaching at a home embroidery show, it was a lot of, oh, your wife must just love you. And I'm like, absolutely not. She's tired of hearing about embroidery. God, she wishes I would quit talking about it. She couldn't care at all. She's not an embroiderer. It's usually a positive, like I said, it's a positive assumption. It's not negative. So it's like, I don't know what needs to be changed aside from just saying, no, I'm the one who likes it. Nobody's holding me at gunpoint at a quilt shop, nor is it like I did it to impress my wife to be the token guy at the sewing circle. That didn't happen either. So it's more about just saying, I like doing it, and this is why I do it. And honestly, most younger people are just like, oh, you make patches? Cool. Can you make 10 of this? That's immediately what happens is, can you make this? Or I've got a great idea for a t-shirt. And then we all just kind of face palm and wait for the great idea for the t-shirt. That's it. And it makes me think of, and sorry for like holding the mic too long. It was different earlier. Like I've written for Mr. X Stitch, Jamie Chalmers out in the UK, MrXstitch.com. He's a guy who looks like me, big, bald, bearded, tattooed, big dude, and he does cross stitching on the trains. And he said that was weird, but I think hand stitching still has more of. I think that would have more of it. Whereas like because we're using machines, it's almost like power tools. Like we get away with it because it's techie and it's like the embroidery power tool version. And then we're cool.
It's power tools.
Tim the Tool Man.
Yeah. We can grunt and talk about our machines and servos, and so we're cool. Like we don't have to worry too much about it. But if we were cross stitching a sampler, then like Jamie does, he probably catches more of that kind of attitude, and that's why he started talking about man embroiderers and saying, as a hardcore looking dude who's 6 foot tall and bald and has a beard and was cross stitching on the train, he had a lot of people want to inquire about why he was doing it. And I think there's still some more of that in the arts and kind of like fiber arts space that there is in commercial embroidery. Commercial embroidery, it's more of a given that we're here.
Well, and I have to say, just from my perspective, I'm fully aware that there's things that women need to do too. And one of them is stop the memes about the skeletal husband sitting outside the quilt shop waiting for his wife, or assuming that a guy who comes into the quilt shop is getting something for his wife, or the guy who goes into the embroidery store is buying something for his wife, or his girlfriend or his mother or whatever it is. So I think that it's incumbent on us as women too to be more inclusive and stop pushing these kind of silly old stereotypes of, well, it bugs me. I mean, we can't demand to be treated a certain way if we're not willing to extend the same treatment to other people. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. Eric's going, I don't care.
There's only one thing I will agree with that I want to kind of say. There are spaces where we don't need to butt in. That is true.
Yeah.
There are spaces where dudes don't need to be, and that's okay. I don't think that's wrong to say. It doesn't mean quilt shops are there because I need some thread. Damn it, me and Jeff need to go get some supplies. All right, but at the same time, like there are places where I can understand fully. Like Lisa does these getaways where it's all women generally, as far as I've understood, who go and they live together in a house for 3 days and do extensive embroidery training. Might be a little weird for me to go stay in one of those spare rooms. I can get that. And I don't find that to be like oppressive. That's not, I don't need to butt into that space.
Well, no. And I mean,
I just want to make space for that and say, yeah, there's reasons why you might not want your local embroidery dude to stay in the Airbnb with everybody on the couch. I can totally get that. And I don't feel bad about it.
Well, I mean, I'll put my hand up as someone who runs a woman only group for decorators, and it's a really nice space and we like it that way. So I'm not saying that you can't have, male centered or female centered things. I'm just saying in general, in the cultural zeitgeist, which is harder to say than one might think. I'm
just glad
we need to be more aware of that.
Usually when
but I don't know. These comments are killing me here, and I need to share a few more. So Jerry Lee says, I don't feel there is a negativity that needs to be changed. I think that change is natural. And then she volunteered me to host the camp for kids, which is not happening, but thank you, Jerry Lee. Kylene says, Aaron Montgomery is her husband, says, Aaron is involved with Skills USA. And when we went to the national competition, it was great to see all the young ladies competing, awesome. Both screen printing and sublimation. And I think that is a good thing. This is a good question. Crystal wants to know, and I don't know if anybody knows this, what about different countries? Is it primarily female in other countries, or is it just us? I don't know the answer to that.
Pretty much going to depend on the country, though. Like, I've been in a couple in Japan, England, and Greece, and they were all primarily women. However, in the Middle East, it's all male.
Okay.
There's not one female working there. So I think that's going to depend on the culture, for the same reason that we think it's a female job to do embroidery. The same thing, just however their culture is.
Okay, that totally makes sense. And from what you said, that's about what I would have expected it to be, because and I've never been to the Middle East, so I'm totally going off what I've read and heard, is that women don't work as much in most of those countries. So I don't know. Interesting question or interesting comment from Carolyn here. When people hear that I do a lot of my own machine repair, now that's a gender thing. I get the look, and more women need to pull the machine apart and learn it. As someone who totally sucks at repairing anything, I vote no on that one. But I don't disagree with it.
Once again, good techs are so hard to come by. I could really care less what chromosomes or other parts you have. If you can repair a machine, you're welcome with me.
Well, I don't know. Most of the machine repair people that I know are guys. I wonder if that's because they think it's a power tool. So they're like, ooh, I can go play with it.
We could also, it might just be time, like Jerry Lee said. It's as people are exposed to the concept that it's something they could do and given a chance to try, then more people will probably do it.
Well, and I think Carolyn hit the nail on the head with what she said, because I do know that women who can repair things, there's still kind of oh, wow, you can actually, and a skepticism about, can you actually do that? So I can't, just for the record, but I know women who can. So I want to do one more question here, or one more comment here. Sheila says, in our house, we work really hard to help our kids not treat the opposite gender as objects. We are brothers and sisters, human beings. I think that really helps when we think about adult relationships and treating all people with respect. And I think that's true as well. And Yosta says, not in Sweden, it's 50-50. That's interesting.
Kind of tracks with my experiences in Iceland too. There just people it wasn't like when I was there and I did get to see the one shop I got to see. Iceland's not real big. It was equally split.
Okay, that makes sense. That totally makes sense. Well, we're getting down to the end here, guys, and I really, really appreciate all the time you've taken. But I guess if I have to have an end question here, Eric's like, oh God, no, what? What's she going to do?
It's about to go bad.
Don't be scared. I won't hurt you. It's okay.
Well, we're not in a kids' camp in Jeff's basement.
Yes, we're going to put a kids' camp in Jeff's basement, and you're all going to come and be male role models for the little boys and girls as they learn about embroidery. No, I guess the final question that I really want to ask you is, and it's a little, when we first talked about this at Fort Worth, I met all of you guys Eric I've known for a while, but I met the rest of you at Fort Worth. And we were talking about this, and I was getting really excited and bouncing in my chair. What made you guys decide that this was something you wanted to do? What motivated you to want to talk about this issue? And I'm looking to see who's looking the most like they don't want to talk. No, I'm not, because I'm not mean. Justin, I'm just going to start with you because you're next to me on the screen.
Well, for me, I'm relatively new within the last year or so in social media and Facebook groups and whatnot. And the more I could talk to the more people in the industry, the better for me.
Okay.
I enjoy learning every aspect of the industry. Seem to be learning something new all the time. And if someone asks me to join them on their show and discuss something that typically I'm not discussing, hey, more power to them. And it's interesting and fun for me.
All right. Jeff, what about you? Jeff's
No, I'm
like,
just kidding.
you asked me and I said, okay.
Yeah, no, I, like all of us here, this is our tribe. This is what we do. This is our passion. This is what we love to do. And we love to talk about embroidery. And, it's fun for me to be able to find other guys that do it. And it's uncomfortable to talk about the subjects that we've broached today. But, it's something that it doesn't hurt to be put out there. It doesn't hurt to be talked about. And if us being on this show shows some young kid that, hey, other guys do it too, I can have the same passion, and they grow up and they find that to be theirs, and it's all worth it. And so, I just, this is my tribe, and I love to do it, and I'm more than happy to help try and inspire somebody that may or may not be on the fence to do it.
I love it. Okay, Mr. Ooga Ooga Man. What do you
boy.
think?
I don't have my notes prepared for this one.
Be profound now. We're all waiting for something profound.
Well, then in that case, peer pressure. No, I'm just kidding. No, when I started, the only thing I knew how to do is make these patches that I bought blanks for, and I wanted to learn how to do something else. So just happened to find one person who didn't say it was a trade secret, which is right above me. And from there, it's just found the lack of other people educating people and trying to give them helpful information. So when you approach, it's like, well, I'm sure I can give some small percentage of what I say could be helpful to other people. So I think that's ultimately why we're here.
I love that. Okay. Mr. Erich.
Well, I think that the easy answer is everyone likes the Erica story. Everyone thinks it's hilarious, probably because I'm a man mountain. I'm 6 foot plus and I'm huge. So everybody thinks it's funny that everybody assumes that I was small and female. The thing is, that assumption, I think, has some deeper implications to it that we should probably think about. I don't think that it's a bad thing. Men are not being oppressed and kept out of embroidery. And like people have been saying, a lot of the people I finally did kind of come to understand and learn were master digitizers were men, especially the digitizing side. A lot of them were. And it was only with the proliferation of the home embroidery machine and affordable home software that I think it changed. It was actually more recent. I think when I very first started, the super commercial side of things were more men, at least in the digitizing side of it. And then I honestly, I was in an all female shop though. And so I learned my craft from women. And so for me, it was like, I always had this sense of just respecting people for what they were willing to offer and give, understanding that we all had a place to be in the spectrum of the thing. And honestly, like Jeff said, if just by being out here and saying this stuff and saying, yeah, I'm into embroidery, it's what I like to do, it's what I do for fun as well as work, and that I don't see that being a problem, then that might let somebody else feel the same way. Luckily enough, I don't see it being a problem like it was when I first started. Just not nearly the same kind of problem. When I see a young person, someone who's in school, and they want to do embroidery, they already know. Like I said, the whole merch thing, people get it now. People
much
get it
more than they used to.
Yeah, and they're willing to express themselves in just about any way they can figure out. And it turns out patches and embroidery are a pretty cool way to do that. It turns out that that's a good thing. Now, I think what I continue to do, though I'll say this is the other place where I get looked at weird, like Jeff described at the quilt shop, is that I will go into all the clothing stores with my wife and turn all the clothes inside out and look at the embroidery. And I may or may not get a weird look or two doing that. However, the thing that I think I am trying to come to more myself is showing work that I do that isn't on the more commercial spectrum. When I was younger, I think I did probably preferentially show logos and cool stuff and hats and that kind of work. But when I've had the chance to do fashion work, sometimes it's really awesome stuff. When you get to do like a big piece for a dress or a bridal piece, we as guys should be able to go check out this awesome floral bridal piece I did, and it shouldn't be a thing. Mm-hmm. And that's for us to do. But like I said, I don't think we're being oppressed. I think if anything, we've always been welcome, and we should just be working as it's the other way around. People with experience and experts who have been in the industry, it's more about us helping people who are new to the industry, who are just trying to learn to gain their traction no matter who they are. But
makes sense. All right, before
doing our work.
before I let you guys go, and I just want to say one thing real quick. None of this was ever aimed at saying the industry isn't inclusive or isn't open to everybody. And I can attest to that myself because I am someone who does nothing that this industry does. I do not embroider. I do not screen print. I do not sublimate. I can't even draw a straight line. I don't want to, but somehow I have become part of this industry. I don't really get it. So you guys are open to people who don't even do what you do. So that I just wanted to make that point because I think it's important. But before I let you guys go, I just want to say, if you're looking for more of Justin's work, you can find him at j8digitizing.com. Jeff's company is at fullerembroideryworks.com. Erich's is up here at erichcampbell.com, and also the Take Up and the Nerds have a show, and the Nerds are the other three guys, in case you're wondering. And then Matt's company is Patch Phrase, and you can find the Embroidery Nerd group there. So thank you all, guys. And you know what? We just went just the tiniest little bit over. So I'm just going to say, I'm going to leave you all up on the screen here. I'm just going to say thank you, everybody. Join me next week. My guest will be Lauren Owens. We will be talking about mental health issues. Thank you all for being here today. Thank you all for your great comments. Thank you guys for doing this. I appreciate it so, so much. And you have now broken the gender barrier on the Women in Business podcast. So, woo! Yeah, if I had a confetti cannon, I'd be shutting it off right about now. Anyway, thank you, everybody. Join me next week, and we will